Let me ask you a follow-on question on that. I thought I heard you say that you are the CIO, not the CTO.
Yes.
But then you said that you were involved in research and development. Can you help me connect those dots?
Yeah, so CTO in a high-tech company is drafting standardization around architecture and integration as far as the company moves forward. And I've actually spent several years doing that with KPMG, so I have some background there. However, without being the CTO, I try to avoid religious wars, and that's one that you will get into a high-tech company. So basically, my teams are internally responsible for delivering services to our development communities. So for instance, I'm not responsible for the product and the code that goes out the door. However, I am responsible for the code in the event of a company meltdown. So I have to deal with source code controls. I'm not responsible for the standards that they go by developing them. However, I help drive processes through a toll gate, phase gate type methodology from ideation to to GA. Everything from testing. Interestingly enough, some of our product groups have taken our internal testing practice and actually asked us to partner with them at implementations at some of our paying customers. So to your point, we are now beginning to blur the lines. So when we stress test applications within a pristine development environment, that's one thing. However, when you take it out to the customer and begin to customize it extensively, that's another thing. So they've actually asked us to joint partner with them, and I'm certain they're charging for our services somewhere in there, and I'm an L, I'm not a P. We actually are partnering a lot with developing and implementing the products at the customer base as well.
Excellent, thank you. And then just one other quick question. You mentioned that a lot of what you do is around the service and the application itself, but you also mentioned that you're heavily involved in the customer interface, so you're involved in not the ergonomics, but the customer interaction aspects of it. Do you have a separate group that deals with the interface piece as opposed to those that are dealing back in the application space?
We do. We actually have, so for instance, if you own one of our products and you call a support center, you're calling a support center about specific help on that particular product. But we actually run a support center within our division that supports the portal content that they are coming through. So if they come through electronically and they have any kind of, so think webmaster type issues, that would be our group that interfaces directly with the customer. And we do that and subscribe to the same standards that our support desks do from a product perspective.
Gotcha. It's a very full plate that you've got there.
Keeps me out of trouble.
That's not
except for those who know me in the room. So.
We're not buying it.
Not buying it.
Yeah, not for a second. Mr. Darling, if you would please tell us about your job.
Yeah, I'm probably the red-haired stepchild up here a little bit from the CIO hat that I wear. I mean, working for a media company, again, it's not manufacturing. It's, from the traditional CIO, compliancy, security, infrastructure, all those pieces or whatever fit under the portfolio. But a lot of what I do throughout the corporation, is driving not only those things into the business and efficiency into the businesses, but really technology. When you look at the kind of the scale or the breadth of areas that we service, from CNN Global Engineering to our global IT groups to, even Turner Studios, which is the largest production facility in the United States. All these areas, our broadcast delivery, as he said, NetOps, basically originating some 28 signals out of the Techwood campus there. So what we are doing is when you look at broadcast and IT, it's, of course, we've heard about convergence, and truly, it's at a rapid pace and accelerating every day as we look at the environments that exist within all these facilities. So again, if it's a broad mixture of really trying to think outside the box as a CIO about how do we drive efficiency, all the while, how do we make it leading edge in the delivery mechanisms and the creative mechanisms for the product that we create. So, it's a fun environment. when you look at our web properties, I mean, we have NASCAR.com, PGA.com, we have CNN.com, so we have a lot of product and brands that we deliver on a daily basis. And we continue to look at, you probably heard about the downfall of our linear product, which is our TNT TBSs. Well, I've heard that for 5 years, and we actually started 5 years ago. We built a large PR&D lab, new products division that basically was focused on how do we transition into the digital age. What we saw is we didn't need to transition possibly as fast as we thought we did, and the linear age has continued to grow, and so we've had to continue to drive more efficiency as well as new technologies to keep it going. But also, too, is we've created several digital businesses over the last 5 years. We've sold off probably 2 or 3 of those in the last year. GameTap, our PlayOn sports division, PlayOn, which was a low-cost entryway of colleges going into producing, whether it be lacrosse, low-level matches that could be seen on the web. So when you look at all these businesses and creations, again, the breadth and the scale of my job is continually looking, and it really ties nicely to kind of a mixture with a CFO, is driving efficiency through excellence within all of our businesses, and then creating the metrics that allows our CFO to really identify, how the businesses are doing. But it also, too, we get off into the relationship with a CFO. It's a great relationship because, again, ours isn't traditional manufacturing where he's looking at things coming out the door, but ours is more built around, our sales systems tied to our on-air product and sale of inventory or advertising, our .com worlds. So we have built, over the last 3 years, we built our own traffic system, replacing our bias system. And again, we feel that these type of builds gives us a competitive edge in the marketplace with advertisers in delivering our products. So again, just the things that we develop and build, I was talking to someone this morning talking about technology and how as a CIO, we really have to be on our toes in creating products. Look at a Twitter for CNN, and then CNN used YouTube during the elections. How do we tie all this social networking together within our businesses? Another phenomena is when you look at some of the anchors on possible CNN and some of our other brands and how they are social networking or creating these communities around their particular shows. So all this has to come into play, so it keeps us fairly busy at Turner.
Was your shop responsible for the maps that we saw on CNN during the election?
They were.
So you've really then, in your shop, you've got a real blend between legacy, and I would include in that all of your old libraries of films, all the way up to the bleeding edge of bleeding edge technology.
No, that's exactly right. And again, that's what we try to leverage is, we've spent a lot of money for those old libraries that Ted bought years ago, the MGM RKOs and so on. So we've had to continue to how do we repurpose that old content as something that's meaningful for our younger generations. Even when you look at Turner Classic Movies, and they're old movies, but how do we make it interesting for the younger generation and tie it to what they would perceive as value as older people do, like me. So anyways, you're right. We've had to look at the full breadth or scale of old to new and just how do we make it work for everyone.
Your two colleagues on the dais came up through sort of similar technology backgrounds. You started out as a creative person. Has that informed your role as a CIO in terms of your ability to be effective?
That's a good question, and it's actually the first time I've ever been asked that. But I think one of the things that really helped me is that as I grew up through the Turner organization is really the people skills more than anything else. I think, and I developed that at an early age as an editor because I had a client behind me that was usually, trying to get the best product and in your face, and you had to massage and work with them and really make it just a great environment for them to continue to come back and use me, as their source of creating great work. So I think fundamentally it developed in me a skill set around building relationships, being a team player, but also too when I was promoted out of the edit seat and they wanted me to run all the editors, and that was the first step, and building collaboration and teamwork, again, that just transcended into a broader scale that I continue to talk about, is how do we drive efficiency? And I'm a firm believer that you drive efficiency through team building, team efforts, empowering people. And if you've ever heard me talk, I mean, those are a lot of things that I focus on in trying to create a dynamic workforce. So.
Good, thank you. We're going to talk a little bit in a second about the evolution of the role of CIO. Before we go there, before we leave this topic though, would each of you please tell us the one technology that you're focused on, or the one area of technology on which you're focused, where you see your organization moving toward, whether it's social networking or whatever it might be. Dan, I'll go back.
Well, I just touched on social network, how that is affecting our not only on-air product, but just about everything we're involved with, because it interfaces with people, our web properties and so on. There's so many aspects of technology and new technology that we continue to work with. I mean, we're actually bringing our mobile hosting inside and working on that right now. But trying to focus on what is probably the most unique thing that we're doing right now in the way of technology. I would have to go back to our sales interfaces right now. We're creating some dynamic product that, again, we think, and not to get into the depth of it, but we think is going to set us apart from other broadcast and cable networks in the way that we interface. You've heard a lot about C3 and minute-by-minute ratings and things that are affecting, especially the media space. And I think right now, from our Time Warner parent company on down, we just spun out Time Warner Cable just recently, but again, they are part and parcel of the process too of delivering product, regionalization, sales. So again, that's really our breadwinner. And I think, we're doing some very interesting things in that space right now.
Robert?
Yeah, I think, being in a high-tech company, one of there are a number of what I'll call viral technologies. And what we're trying to struggle with is how to capture the productivity of the younger generations coming into a high-tech industry with these viral tools. And I'm usually stuck in the middle between that and, I'll call it the old school, we got to standardize everything it is that we do. And I think that's a huge challenge today, is that every case where we've attempted to try to capture or harness the value coming out of some type of viral, social, whatever you want to call it, product, we've almost always killed it. And so maintaining that balance between this viral world with all the requirements of, I've got HIPAA, everybody's got their own, you got PCI, and all those types of things, partnered with running a corporation, probably is just, so what is the latest technology? It was something yesterday, it will be something different tomorrow.
Where does cloud computing fit in with that? That seems to be one of the things that's at least getting discussed, if not exercised.
Well, I love cloud computing. Nothing better than going to a conference where someone has a personal picture of a cloud as they're introducing their speech. Cloud computing, it ranges the gamut. Obviously, in our development environments, we're moving more and more into that world. But we again still deal with the dynamics of the culture. We have a culture that it's irrelevant to them where that cloud or where it's at, with the other side of what I'll generally call box huggers. So you've got your old school developers who want to touch it, feel it, and go and get it. And you've got a new group that, and it's an interesting dynamic. It is, an older dynamic which is trying to refine the way we use tools, and there's a newer dynamic that basically just fills a glass like water. It doesn't matter. They just take to it and they move to it. And it's a very interesting process to work through. So how does cloud fit into that? Obviously, from a go-to-market perspective, there's enormous amounts of fear around security and content, et cetera, all the way to I visited, I'm trying to think, I was in Chicago at a Microsoft new data center, which is actually shaped in a V, where they basically back in containers, and they have standardized plugs on these containers, like 18-wheelers, and they plug them in. And it's basically a space, storage, capacity, processor universe in that case. And when they reach a certain point of failure, they pull the trailer out and bring in another one. So I think what you're going to see is that the things that we're concerned about today from an IT perspective, we're all kind of old, okay? So, I mean, we're older than most of the people we're hiring today. I believe will be almost a non-issue for our next generation because they just fill whatever comes into play.
Right.